but I can see now like things are happening without me, and the teams they're talking and they're problem solving and or we call it solution finding. Uh, but they're doing these things without me. Uh, I had to retrain my brain though that I don't have to be involved in every single one of these things. And now I'm taking the Dan Martell approach of buying back my time and continuing to do the things that I want to do now.
Welcome, everybody, to the Family Biz Show. I'm your host, Michael Columbus, with Family Wealth and Legacy in Rochester, New York. And today we've got a great show for you. We got Dan Willams from Williams Fence of Central New York, out in the Deansboro area. Welcome, Dan.
Michael, thanks for having me.
So our tradition on the show is to kind of ask you to provide, what was your journey coming into the family business? Everybody's journey is a little bit different. I'm just curious what yours looked like, from working in the family business to school, or what did what was your journey to get in there?
Okay, so it's interesting because my dad had that entrepreneurial spirit going back to high school, was a trapper, sold fur, went all the way up through logging business. And when he got out of Vietnam, I grew up on the family farm across the street. So my first steps were literally at work because we lived on the farm. And, we just, that's the way it was. At 5, I got paid a nickel a week and I was in charge of sweeping mangers and throwing hay down. I couldn't wait to get up in the hay mow. So I kind of graduated to like the calf barn. And by the time I was 11, I was like getting $3 an hour was pretty good pay. And I was driving tractors, doing field work, in charge of about 75 young stock, certain days of the week. And then in 1988, my dad sold the farm, which broke my heart. And we moved across the street to my grandfather's place. My dad had always been a builder. He was a CB in Vietnam, so it was like he was always building something. He built the farm from scratch. So we started doing like concrete work, jacking up houses, putting basements under them. And my dad just wanted to get back into agriculture, and we had this 60-acre farm. So he hired this guy, Troy, the grass whisperer, to put a fence up for us. And Troy couldn't run a business, but he could build a hell of a fence. So he hired us to help him. And when we got done building that fence, he said to my dad, uh, would you buy my business? So for $1,700, we bought his small tools and 100 people on the customer list. And we already had a skid steer. We bought a pounder and we went to a school out in Pennsylvania. And that was like, I was a senior in high school. And if
What year
anybody
is
knows
that?
me out, well, it was 1993. So my
Okay.
dad incorporated in March of 93. And my grandfather, who had been on the farm, was bored to pieces. So he came on as our chief salesman. And we hired a guy by the name of Jack Frost, right out of the, character, right? Jack Frost
Right,
nipping
right.
at your nose. Yeah. And so it was a team of 4 that first year. I had a running scholarship at Allegheny College. So I worked through the summer, building fence all day, running at night. And then I went to Allegheny in the fall. And every summer after that, I worked for dad, in between, college. Um, I had one of those storied careers where it took me 7 years to get a 4-year degree. I wasn't the student I am now. And I had injuries. I actually rode my bicycle across Canada and down the Pacific coast in 93, had a bit of a um, epiphany and thought maybe I wanted to live in Colorado. So I did that for a brief period and then came back. And then I graduated from SUNY IT with mechanical engineering major and geology minor in 19, well, it would have been 99, I actually graduated. I married Melissa in 97, and then my mom passed away in 1998. So it was like this whole big upheaval in my life. Uh, and so when I graduated, I got a job at Griffiths Air Force Base for literally 2 weeks. And I was sitting at a desk and I just was looking deep into the future. And I was like, there's absolutely no way I could do this for another 25, 30 years. So I called dad and I was like, Dad, I just want to come back and work for you. And at the time, he was really struggling with my mom's death and all those things. And it just worked out that he just said, yeah, come in and take over field operations. My grandfather, who was in his late 70s, was still selling. And I dove right in and it was really my thing. I really enjoyed, building things and working with clients. So that was when I came on full time was 19, would have been 99.
Okay. Talk about, it was farm fencing at the time. I mean, that's, for the most part of, what you did. Talk about, what you did back then versus, what was the kind of the progression to where, what you do today and what's different about it.
Yeah, I mean when we started, nobody knew what high tensile electric fence was around here. Everybody was in barbed wire. uh, Very regressive area. There was quite a bit of farming here still. So we weren't able to like fill our calendar up when we first started on just straight farm type fencing. And I remember doing whatever it took. I mean, we did concrete work. If someone needed, a flat pour in a garage, we could do that kind of thing. We did some privacy stuff and backyard stuff, but we didn't really love that. We really loved being outside. So probably I would say when I came on in 99, that was when we really made the shift and just said, hey, we're just going to go to straight farm fence. In 2000, we worked for a guy by the name of Bill Ziff. It was the first billionaire we ever worked for. And that just changed the game. For us, it was like, wow, it really it put us on the map for being able to do something really big. The guy was spending 70 million a year on his property and he wanted all the deer kicked off. So he hired us to come in and build about 4 miles of fence through in Putnam County. So we're talking it was either this or that. It was not level. Um, it was a massive project, and we did that. And then we had been doing a lot of this watershed work in for New York City in the 90s. We did more of that. That was I basically lived in Delaware County. I was in Delaware County during 9/11.
Okay.
People knew me better down there. New York City spent about $100 million on fencing and all kinds of projects to get the animals out of the streams, and we did a ton of that work down there. Because, like I said, it wasn't our area was pretty. It was just was they weren't up with the times. But that was kind of the progression. We ran with that farm fence model until the '08 market crash. And then I got concerned, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Maybe we should diversify and do more. And in 2008, we expanded back into residential, some commercial, and well, that didn't last very long. I mean, we kind of lucked out again in that '09, '08 time frame. It would have been in the fall of '08 actually, when the stock market had crashed, September?
Mhm.
I had a girl that answered the phone and ran our retail store, and she was like, I got a guy here that wants to fence in 100 acres. And I was like, if this guy's serious, have him meet me over at my farm. And I've got like 10 miles of fence on the farm, and I consider myself to be a good grazer, and I knew how to build systems for grazing animals. So I meet this guy, and he was no BS. We did this project. It was, I think, I want to say it was 70, 80,000, but that was like the tip of a huge iceberg. Ended up doing 90 miles of fence for the guy over the next 2 years. And it just really, it catapulted our business. That's when we expanded into excavation and just really, things really blew up at that point.
Love it. Take a second before we start talking about what you do today and what's different. Um, Talk about the transition. When did Dad start to step aside, and what did that, what did that look like?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I look back now and I'm like, man, I feel like my dad was less of a control freak than maybe my mind tells me he was. And also, um, maybe I really, as I've learned to kind of step back and trust the team, that wow, he was doing things and I didn't really know it.
Mhm.
Um, probably right off the bat, like I said, when my mom passed away, my grandfather was taking care of sales, so he was pretty on that. And Dad had taken a back stop. He just said to me, make a mistake. Everyone does. Make it twice. I'm gonna start to wonder. And that was kind of the deal. And I surely made a ton of mistakes along the way. In 2003, we bought Endless Trails Farm. It was 348 5-acre farm. Unbelievable. We hit it out of the park. We bought this property for 700 an acre with the barns and houses and like crushed it. Dad and I went over there and we worked nights and weekends and we turned it into a B&B. I was a 1/3 owner. He was 2/3 owner. Had 160 head of cattle over there, and we had box stalls. People could bring their horses and stay and ride. We, our farm actually was adjacent to 20,000 acres of state land. So it was unbelievable. Our guests could ride right off the property, right into a 130-mile trail system that the state maintained. It worked great, and that was the beginning of the end of Dad working at Williams Fence Company. It was 20 miles away, and he moved over there. And I'd say in like '05, he came in one day. We had a really difficult customer, and I've since fired her, but at the time, he threw his measuring wheel down his briefcase, and he's like, "I'm done." And my grandfather had passed away about 2 years prior. So he was supposed to be doing sales. And it turns out I was really the only one doing sales and running the business. So in '05, he was like, I'm done. I'm like, when? He's like, right now. I was like, oh, wow. Like right now? I didn't get like 2 weeks notice. I'm done. In '08, we finally came to a deal. I sold out my shares on Endless Trails, and he sold out Williams Fence Company, and I paid him every month for the next 10 years, and it worked great. Um,
Had you
I
guys
think
talked about succession before that, or not really?
so. We had a buy sell agreement that we had set up that was super rudimentary, and he gifted me stock uh, in lieu of more pay. And I think that may have started, it started pretty early. I think when mom died, he was like, you know what? I don't want to do this forever. I'm going to get this set up. I think he just knew that I cared and it was going to be okay. He wasn't going to just give the business to me. So we had someone come in and do a full independent audit and evaluation. He was very fair about it. Um, and it was it was pretty simple. I got to 50% and he was like, "You know what? Good enough. I'll you buy out my 50%. I'll buy out your 30% of Endless Trails." And Melissa and I made payments, and it was pretty simple.
Nice, very nice. What was it like working with your dad? I mean, from the days of the farm all the way, it was like the only thing that you knew for the most part, go to
Yeah.
school and work at the Air Force Base. What was that like for you?
It was tough. My dad and my grandfather were either pass or fail. And that's like something that we talk about in Vistage with Kevin Ellis growing up on the farm. You either did it all the way or it wasn't right. Those guys had tempers, so you deal with that. And we don't always treat family as well as we do strangers. So that was real. You know
100%.
what I mean? My
100.
grandfather's nickname was Grumpa. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we were like 8, 10 years old doing what a grown man was getting paid to do. And if you missed the mark on it, you sure heard about it. Um, but they were fair and they were very progressive. So that part was cool. And I think that's what's really been something that shaped me is my dad was never afraid to try something new,
Okay.
something different. And we know like this is the greatest rate of change in business, if not the history of the world, right? What's going on right now with technology and AI and you every day it's like, holy cow, I did not know that you could do that,
Right.
right? But they had that mindset back then. Like everybody around here top, had top load, unload silos. My dad put in a bunker silo, and they were like, "Oh, that's crazy." Everyone had tie stanchion barns, and my dad put in a freestall, which took the labor way down. They were constantly thinking along those lines, which I think they really, ingrained into my mind as well.
Yeah. Hey, if you can get things done faster, better, stronger, all in, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, so you talk about, it was pass fail was maybe a little tough. What were some of your favorite parts about working with your dad and your grandpa?
My I think the the joy we brought to our customers, the relationships that we built, people really trusted my grandfather. And when he came to sell you a job, it was like, we're gonna follow through on this. It was just learning that um, simple approach that customers just really clamor to, which is I'm going to tell you what we're going to do, and then we're actually going to do it, and we're going
Right.
to do it in a timely fashion. What frustrated them, and frustrates so many customers is the whole not knowing, right? What I call, they don't call me back. They call me back, then they don't show up to the appointment. They show up to the appointment, and they never give me an estimate. Uh, you know, they give me an estimate. I sign the contract. They never give me a start date. They give me a start date. They don't even come close to it. They start the project and they don't finish it. And for us, it was like early on, my grandfather was like, I told them that we were doing this. And I had a couple fences I had to take out and redo. You learn quick that whatever he told them is exactly what we're going to do. Um, and it was those are good lessons to learn early because if you can do those things, I don't care what you're selling, customers gonna buy it
Yeah.
because you're delivering.
Right.
um, and that's what we tell our team today is just this process is all about that customer. If we don't do these things right, we have no reason to get together in the morning.
It's funny because I've got some younger people that have been working for me, whether they come in as interns or just, new starts, and the same kind of thinking. They're like, I'm still young. How am I gonna talk to somebody that's 50 or 60 years old and, be able to hold my own with that? I said, well, there's a couple things that are real simple. One is, don't just be on time, be early, you know, tell them what you're going to do and then do it. And start to, if you build this track record of building trust, just like your grandfather did with people. I gave him my word what I was going to do, and then by, come heck or high water, we're going to make sure that we do that. And when you do those things, the age part starts to go away. You don't have to know everything. You just have to know where to get the information.
Right.
And but trust and building trust, and showing up on time, and just doing the basics goes an awful long ways.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, we were figuring it out. I remember we worked for this guy by the name of Dennis Yowzy. He was, oh my gosh, fussy particular. He had the nicest farm in Madison County, legit. And we did a fence for this guy. It's still standing today. I drive past it because my uncle lives out that way. But it took us a week to do that fence, to do it right. And then if you fast forward in the probably 96, 3 years later, we were cranking one of those out a day because we had better processes, better equipment, and uh, and that was it was really fun to see that progression. We were on that thing. I had a guy that I worked with early. It's unfortunate he ended up getting into drugs, and I fired him. But before that, we called ourselves super fencers. We had super fencer on the truck. Like we were all about figuring out how to do something more efficiently, better. It was just it was just bred into us. And my dad and I didn't, he would be like, hey, I remember one of the last times he was on a job, I was like, Dad, I got it. Okay. We're not doing it that way because it's another mile walk around the fence. And I'm not walking another mile. Like I'm all about saving my stops here. And so just understand that what we're doing is actually better. And he was like, all right, whatever. And it was cool after that because he would just see the money in the checking account. It was like I went out and sold the job after grandpa died and sold it, worked with my girl Dad in the office, got the material, did the job, billed them, and he just sees it happening. He's like, wow, he's like, these things are happening without me.
That's a nice experience for somebody to be
Yeah.
able to turn it
Yeah.
over to the next generation and just watch it happen. That's
Yep.
great. Um, Talk about what you do. What do you do today that's different? Talk about where you're going, the outlook that you see for the company.
Yeah. So we've really made a hard pivot over the last year and a half, 2 years. Right before COVID, I went to Goldman Sachs. It was the first business school I'd been to. Okay. Up until that time, we literally ran off a cash balance. All right, there's money in the checkbook. And, I didn't really know a damn thing about business. Like I said, I studied geology and mechanical engineering. That being said, it was working fine, but I wanted to really myself, once dad and grandpa were gone, I was looking to be able to pull myself out of the business. Melissa and I, my wife, were very deep in. This was 2018, would have been a Christmas party. So I had a friend that said, uh, hey, you should go talk to Tim. Tim guided people up Mount Everest. And my buddy, it's crazy. This guy, it's like six ways to Kevin Bacon with this guy, Dan. Like he goes, this guy over here was on Jacques Cousteau's boat. He was his right hand man. Oh yeah. I was at a party and I'm like talking to this guy and he's telling me stories and it's like remarkable. So, at any rate, I go over to Tim and I'm going to talk to him about Mount Everest because he had been up there on 96 when all the people had passed away. John Krakauer wrote Into Thin Air about that, and he was actually one of the guys that saw the forecast and the weather, and he called his team off. He was like, "I don't care if you guys have shelled out 60,000, ain't gonna help you when you're dead on the mountain." So his team stayed down low, and he actually did rescue and recovery efforts. Um, he's guided people all over the place. In fact, him and I were talking. We're going to go up down to Patagonia next year and do something big, a 20,000 footer. But any rate, he's running about a 30-person business remodeling and designing high-end homes in Cooperstown. So we talk about Everest, but like two business owners, you're always naturally you go to business. That's eating up 95% of your brain most days. So all of a sudden he's like, we're talking business. And he's like, I said, how do you run your business and go to Everest? He goes, oh my gosh, it was a complete F show before I did this Goldman Sachs small business school. It's free. So I went right home and I applied and I got into the fall session. It actually, you do 2 week long sessions at Babson. So it's a entrepreneurial school outside of Boston. Really cool place. Um, but Goldman Sachs does a great job with it. The rest of it was online. And this is right before the pandemic. So this is fall of 2019. And I pulled myself out of the business. I spent about 30 to 40 hours a week working on, there were 14 modules in this
Okay.
program. And it started with the numbers. So I had to get all our P&Ls together and started learning about balance sheets and cash flow. Realized we could probably use a better accountant. That didn't happen right yet, but it definitely got me along those lines. And so, and when I graduated in the fall of 2019, I came to the team and I said, we got to get an ERP system. We've got to get in the cloud and let's use this winter to do it. So we started in January 2020, uh, not knowing a pandemic was coming 3 months later or whatever. And so became the most painful time of my life, full disclosure. And I tell people, like, we launched that ERP system in April, right after we ran out of toilet paper, and 2x4s had a daily number. It was freaking nuts. And so began like the next, that 2020 and 21, I had four people selling for us in our business. One was doing residential, one was doing commercial fence, one was selling excavation, and the other was selling ag fence. And we had put everything into this system, and we were still trying to get our financials were in QuickBooks. So we didn't have everything talking when the pandemic hit. And our business went from, I think we did like well, if I looked at the numbers, it was 2.7 million in 2019. And then we just went three and change, almost four. And then 21 was like 5.7. Last year was, or 22 was 6.9 or something, or no, 7.8. And then last year was 10 million. So it just went like this. And I finally in 21, because like I said, we were so overwhelmed. I was trying to run the business from an excavator seat, trying to run jobs. Meanwhile, my wife is like, I have no idea what the hell's going on here. You guys are buying equipment. I don't know about it. You're hiring people. It was chaotic. That's when I came out of the woods on at December 31st of 21 and said we got to do something different. I took about a week and just decompressed. That was when we hired a CFO and came in and just rebooted our ERP system and got rid of QuickBooks and got everything into one place. That was actually I joined Vistage as well, which I've told you this story. I love to ski powder. I do not ski crappy snow. I don't care. It just isn't fun to me to hear my skis making the noise of because I don't like ice and I don't like landing
Nice
on.
guy, huh? Okay.
Yeah, I don't like it. But in February, we were in Jackson Hole and I had paid $1,100 to go on a guided tour, and the snow was absolutely horrendous. And I was like in between, do I cancel or do I go? And something just said to me, don't cancel, go anyways. And if you've been to Jackson Hole, you take the tram 4,000 vertical feet up. And when you go guided, you go out of bounds. So it'd be like skier right. We went way over into No Name Canyon. The wind's blowing like 50 miles an hour. The snow's horrendous. There's like nothing. It's wind affected, it's sun affected, it's crusty, it's super variable. And the guide was like, "Oh wow, I just expected it would be better right here, and it's not." He's like, "Hang on," and we just happened to look over and we saw another guide coming with two individuals, and he's like, "I'm gonna talk to this guy, and I want you to take a few minutes. Just talk with these guys, eat your lunch, and we'll figure out how to get down. And so I was asking the guy, I'm like, where are you from? Because I'll talk to anybody. And he goes, New York. I go, Nigel, I'm from New York. Really? Wow. What do you do in New York? He goes, oh, I own a construction business. I'm like, no kidding, me too. I go, what do you do? He goes, so I do paving and I got a quarry. He goes, I go, okay, so you're out here on vacation. He goes, nah, I moved out here 7 years ago. And I was like, wait, permanently? And he goes, yeah, 7 years ago, I, uh, I made the move out here. I'm like, so hold on, how many people do you have working for you in New York? He goes, I got about 100. I'm like, you have 100 people working for you in New York and you've been out here 7 years. How in the hell is that possible? And he said, I joined Vistage. And I was like, that stuck in my mind. Flash forward, we made it down through the worst snow. Our guide was like, he goes, I've never seen somebody so. He was like, he just kept apologizing. He's like, I'm so sorry. I mean, we were in breakable cross, should have torn an ACL all day long. He goes, I can't believe how happy you are and how you're not like upset about this or anything. And I was like, all I could think was, I don't really give a shit.
Just
If I'm getting anything out of it, it's the fact that I'm calling this Vistage company when I get back here, and this goal of having a business run without me was something I was really after. And so I made that call when I got back to the condo, and I think it was like the Tuesday. I remember talking to Scott Gibbs and being like, "Holy shoot!" I just tears started to flow because you've been in business. It's like it just becomes like that one child that when it's great, it's great, but man, when it's bad, it's like, oh, it's bad. I was I
hard.
was in the yeah, it was exceptionally hard. And I felt like I tell people this, I felt like Tommy Boy before he learned how to sell, where I was like smashing the cars together and lighting them on fire on the dude's desk. I'm like, how did I get to this point? Like I was so good at running the business over here, and then suddenly when we hit the scale button and went like this, I just completely lost all, sense of direction and what to do.
Yeah.
Uh,
But that is so not uncommon, or it is so common. I guess it's just that
yeah,
you get going and you're good at doing something. You guys were spectacular at putting up fences and excavating and then you to go from taking that skill set to becoming a professional business. I'm doing the air quotes thing for people that are listening, and to be able to scale it, it's all about the systems and processes. And it's not just the systems and processes for doing stuff, it's the systems and process around culture and people and cash flow and getting all of these things going and making sure that our strategies going in the right direction. You guys could execute. Matter of fact, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the fact that you have a machine that you built called the GSD, Get Stuff Done Machine, which I just
yeah,
think is awesome. And I know that's not the acronym that you use, but for radio purposes or for the podcast purposes, we'll go with it.
yeah,
But that was to your point of how can we do something better, faster, stronger? When it came to the work, it was easy to implement, new ideas and figure out, hey, if we took this part of this machine and that part of that machine and we made a Frankenfence machine, it's really going to help us shave a lot of time off of this. Well, that part inside of the business, like the soft sides of the business and strategy, that's not always taught. And it's harder. It's much more difficult without having some other people around you, like you do in Vistage, I do in Vistage. That's how Dan and I knew we met was through the Vistage world, being in the same Vistage group together.
yeah,
And it's a journey. And even for someone like me who is a business coach, and we've done some work together in utilizing the Metronomics business coaching system and the business system. The tough part of that, for me, is the fact that, you know, I always looked at my business as without me, it doesn't operate because, you know, I'm, you know, the wealth advisor, business coach. I'm the one that's the feet on the street. And it took, you know, me watching somebody who was a much smaller business than I was, who said that they didn't, you know, they wanted to, you know, run their business from afar and spend more time doing motocross, and watching him become successful at it. I'm like, Michael, it's you. It's not, it's, you know, and every business can be run using systems and processes and getting help from people like Vistage or Metronomics or whatever business coaching
Yeah.
system that you're using. Good for you. Um, I find it exciting. What would you say, you know, in the past 2 years or so are some of your favorite moments and some of your favorite, you know, aha moments through Vistage and Metronomics and the Goldman Sachs, you know, school? What were some of the things that, you know, today, you know, that they were turning points for what you were doing?
Oh my gosh, there's been so many of them along the way. I mean, I just feel like the um the first aha moment was joining Vistage, and what I said to Scott was every month I got what I needed. If it was either the speaker that came in that just was like, oh wow, um, starting off with Scott, because I was in such a bad spot, and you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I'm gonna blame other people, and he's like, you broke this, you fix this. If you want to be the CEO, if you want to be the leader of this company, it's like the Buffalo Bills. They lost yesterday, right? Are we gonna blame the kicker or is it the team? And I just had to take ownership of it first. And then from there it honestly was like a monthly thing. Like I learned something. Oh wow, that's going to be super helpful for what we need right here, right now. Because we had to fix everything. I mean, it was like clean up in aisle 1 through 16. It didn't. It just and it took time. What I feel like having that once a month meeting gave me hope, because I would be feeling like, oh gosh, this last month's been such a grind. And then you go and you just realize there's 10, 11, 12 other people that are they're all dealing with stuff, in various forms. So that along the way, um, we just had Greg Buston come in and talk about accountability. And that absolutely changed the game for us. It took my partner and I've since got a business partner that's part of the program, and he really helped get us aligned on accountability. That's like the most misused word in the business dictionary, I would call it right now. I'm going to hold you accountable. Sounds like a prison sentence. And it sounds awful for the person that's holding as well as the person being held. Uh, this idea of ownership, that really has changed so much of our culture instantly. Just
Yeah.
having a discussion with the team that I'm going to be accountable for the fact that things haven't gone as well as possible over the last 3 years. That being said, we have done a lot. It did also change my mindset in what I grew up in. Kevin Ellis and I talk about this pass fail on the farm, but it's not realistic. We can't just go 0 to 100 on changing our business. It's going to be at best, it's going to be this, and then it's going to sometimes be awesome, and then sometimes it's going to be back and whatever. It's going to be that crazy, who knew that was going to happen,
Right.
kind of concept.
But
Um,
if you look at businesses across, you know, the US, very few break $1 million in revenue. And not only did you guys, you know, break $1 million of revenue, and through that you hit the 10 million mark, which is like unheard of. The you know, most people that are employed think that every business owner's out there doing 10, $50 million. They're all just getting fat, dumb, and happy and rich off of the work that we're doing. At the end of the day, the amount of work and the, you know, that so few businesses break through that and get to that number. And to get there, it's a lot of reinvestment and a lot of building up your people and your equipment and your systems and processes. It's not just any one thing, and it is a boatload of work. Sometimes, and I bet you might agree with this, there was times when it was, back in the simpler days when we didn't make as much money, it was a way easier sometimes. Um,
Yeah, I'm an ultra marathon guy, so I was already doing the 6, 7 days a week thing with the business. And I tell people like I was really good at that, and then I could juggle 8 things. I could do this and that. I could get my teams out. I could bid all the work and do all these things. It's fine. You can do that to a point, but when you get to the pain line and you cross over it and you keep trying that, it just becomes catastrophic, not just for you as the business owner, but for the business itself. And now, like this light bulb moment that came on, we have, I see it happening. I can get up in the morning, I do a whole routine. My hot tub looks out on my shop, so I can see what's going on from 5 o'clock. But I can see now, like things are happening without me, and the teams they're talking and they're problem solving and or we call it solution finding. Uh, but they're doing these things without me. Uh, I had to retrain my brain though that I don't have to be involved in every single one of these things. And now I'm taking the Dan Martell approach of buying back my time and continuing to do the things that I want to do now. I'd set a goal. I've always been a goal oriented person, and that came from running in high school. Like I would write down, I want to break the school record, and I wrote to Runner's World and said, my coach isn't that good. I need someone to help me break 428.7. That's a school record. And I got a guy from Runner's World who developed a whole plan for me. And I was goal setting. That's distance running. It's like, hey, I'm going to run 50 miles this week. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Um, I was really, really into long-term goal setting. And my goal back in the 20s was to be retiring at age 50 to what I call stage one retirement. Because I always joked around, but I said, I don't know if I'll ever retire. Like, I don't picture myself going to the diner and talking about what I used to do. It's not me. Uh, but at stage one, I could then run my farm like a tourism type business was this goal I had. And that's actually happening now. We've got a cabin that I started building during the pandemic on my 8 mile mountain bike trail system. And people are just running it. I got some dude coming tomorrow night from Canada. It's like, oh wow. I've got the Blueberry Brook Farm Resort that's hooked onto our farm, and we had guests there this weekend. So I'm dropping scones off and just lighting the hot tub and doing
let,
those kinds of things.
let me pause you for just a second. Dan has Blueberry Brook Farm, and it's the blueberries are the size of apples. It looks like they're not quite that big, but definitely monstrous blueberries. And he makes fabulous, fabulous scones that are absolutely delicious and part of being at Blueberry Brook Farm. So, and then there's a wood-fired hot tub that's on the property, which is also, very unique in this day and age. So some very cool stuff happening. So here we are in this world of fencing and excavating and a lot of the fencing work that you do today. And I just, again, I know this from us working together, but it's, you're doing the solar farms and fencing those in and the excavating around them. And at the same
Yeah.
time, you're running, you've got real estate, pieces, you've got farm pieces, you've got the bike trails, you've got Blueberry Brook Farms, you've got a lot of things going on. So you are doing that shift of, I don't have to have, you have your hands in everything, but you don't have to do everything. And you have other people that are accountable for what's going on. And I would put you at, this may be step one of those things. And that, that you're working to get to, phase two and phase three. And it's fun to watch you do all the things that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, we had talked earlier about where the business was, and we just reset our core purpose. Our core purpose is GSD better every day, which we're actually building out on those words now. So we're saying instead of, SHIT, get safely done. What are some other words that we can fill in on that? Because I'm using that as like, okay, the base framework for now, let's get the input. What does better mean? What does every day mean? And then family, innovation, and commitment are our core values. What does family mean to you? And we're going around the team and we're asking, what does innovation mean for you? What does commitment mean for you? And we're going to keep building that out. We're very, very committed to becoming a construction management company that happens to specialize in fence excavation. And we're actually doing the concrete for like the inverter pads in the solar. We're really, really proud to be not just in solar, but our team is focused on doing it better. If we talk about safety, and I talk with some of these companies that we're working for, number one concern is safety. The second is the SWIFT, or the environmental impact of the construction project. We've been working off-road doing fence for 30 years, and our clients didn't want their property destroyed. They wanted a fence put up, or they wanted an excavation project done. That was something my dad would be like, stay out on the perimeter of that field. You don't want to be burning any extra hay lot. You're thoughtful about what you're doing. If you're on someone's lawn, same thing. They want a fence. They didn't want to re-landscape their lawn. So we learn by whatever processes, mistakes, etc. But what we're saying now is, how do we do this job and we do it much more efficiently than our competition? And safety is just better because we have less people and we're doing it faster. So, and by faster, I mean more efficient, not running around like a chicken with your head cut off, but with purpose. Fence is linear. If I start at point A, I don't want to be, I don't want to be going like all over the place. I just want to go around it. And I want to cut those trips down because, we're going to put up, I would say we could, if what we were talking about with our team, uh, we're probably going to be on the order of at least a couple 100 miles of fence this year.
A lot of
We've got,
fence.
yeah, 100,000-foot fences to do. So, if we take one extra trip around, that's 150 miles. That's like almost going to Albany and back on foot. That's a long walk. And if we can cut that down, we're going to be safer, and we're going to be less environmental impact because we're not all over the place. And that's been the cool part, is getting the team really thinking about that. Like, there's so much opportunity right now in construction. I'm very, very excited about taking that Scrum process of thinking along with the lean concept that's already in manufacturing.
Okay.
Because I feel like manufacturing's a good solid 70 years ahead of us on this. That Toyota way that Deming came up with, before World War II. It's really how we beat the Russian or the Germans and the Japanese. Was Deming said, "Hey, we got to pump out planes, tanks, bullets, butter, with the women, the children, and the people that couldn't go to war." And he took that process of simplification, and then after World War II, they sent him to Japan, and that's the Japanese didn't come up with lean. It was Deming that brought it to Japan, and then they kind of took ownership of it. We are not in construction. There's what gives me so much hope is there's so much upside potential. Like we haven't even tapped it. Toyota said they looked at their process and they thought 90% of their car was waste, and they eliminated that 90%. And then with the 10%, they did it again. That's something that construction, it's just, give me your drug addicts, give me your alcoholics, give me your guys that can't get a normal job and will build some shit for you. And excuse my French, but that's the way construction's been. It's been, you know, not not thought of as a professional industry. I see that changing, and that's certainly what we're doing with our organization.
Yeah, talk about, the impact of people on your organization and how, how that's been a mind shift for you over the last, few years.
Yeah, so thank God for Vistage and some of the speakers. I think prior to that, I saw everybody as me, which is not really the best way to go about it. It's like, why don't they just want to run around like an ultra, you know, hyperactive and overachieving, knucklehead, and realizing that to build a really high performing team takes a whole bunch of different people and personalities. And when you bring all those together and put the right people in the right places, my wife does the payroll, and she she looks over the checkbook and reconciles it every month. That's not me. Okay. If there's people that all fit in, and for me now it's like recognizing that, coupled with what Greg Buston said, a couple months ago. You got to figure out what it is that drives and motivates people, and they're none of them are going to be the same. And once you unlock that, then that's when the real good stuff happens. You're not pushing anymore. Like they talk about the flywheel concept.
Sure.
I've been thinking a lot about that flywheel concept, and like now it's going. Okay, Dan, let go, back away. You know, it's it's important now for me to. I see it finally. Um, I'm gonna. I'm not saying I'm not gonna be around, but at the same time, I'm not gonna go on meddling. I'm gonna ask questions, a lot more questions, and as my buddy Tim says, he spends 2 hours a day with his business, and a majority of that is building leadership.
Makes a big difference. So if we look over the next 12 months, what would you say is your top priority, your number one priority as the CEO, business owner for your businesses over the next 12 months?
So we've been experiencing cash flow issues for the last few years as we've grown. When you grow on that kind of a curve, 30-40%, I mean, there's two ways that you can fund it: either go to the bank or not profitability. My key, I have a key hire that's going to be coming on here real soon. Going to be working with him and the leadership team to get us on the cash flow positive, and then to be funding growth in a way that makes that makes sense. Um, that's to me, I think, my top priority.
Okay. I'm going to throw a curveball at you. When you look at your family, what totally outside of business, but what are some of your favorite family traditions for the Williams family?
Oh wow. So it's changed a lot, I think, as the kids have grown. For us, the thing that happens once a year, and we didn't talk about this yet, was Daniel Martin Mudfest. And my family came together after my niece was in the Sandy Hook tragedy, and she was about 4 rooms down where the 21st graders were lost. So she heard everything. Her best friend Daniel Martin was one of the 21st graders that was lost in Newtown. My wife and I went down. My sister lived next door to the Bardens, and what do you go say to people that just lost their 7-year-old boy? We had met him like Daniel 6 or 7 times prior, at birthday parties and family events. For me, like I tell people this, out of the worst thing that we had happened in America, certainly in a school outside of Columbine, was so horrible for so many people, but it was an inflection point for me. At 39 years old, I realized I had only been about me and my family. When we went to the church for the funeral, the last speaker said, if you can do something to change, the discussion in this world, then do something. And I had this epiphany about putting on a mud run. I had just run two Tough Mudder races, and the guy I had run those races with owned MKJ Farms 2 miles from my farm. Willie Nelson had played there, Charlie Daniels band. And I immediately turned to my wife when we were walking out of the church. I said, "We're going to put a mud run on for the Bardens." And not knowing anything, I made 3 phone calls between the church and the cemetery, and we put that event on. It would have been April 13th of 2013, and the Bardens came up. It changed their lives, according to Mark. Mark said it literally gave us hope. People did great things for us, but your event gave us the strength to keep going on, and that was only the only goal I had at the time. I just wanted to get them back on their feet. We raised like $83,000 off that single day event. It was crazy. Um, I Mark called me that fall and said, "Would you do it again?" And I said, "I was already planning on it, Mark." And he's like, "Can we make it bigger?" And I was like, "Don't threaten me with a good time. Uh, we're doing this." And so that second year, we had a half-mile kids run with 12 obstacles, a 5-mile obstacle course that or 5K obstacle course. I think we had like 12 obstacles on it, and then I added a 5 mile, which that year we got a biblical 42-inch dump late March. We had the event on April 5th. We oh yeah, no, we had snow. We had 15-foot snow drifts on the top of the course. I had plans of building obstacles up there, and I just called it Glacier Ridge, and I put a sign. They were like post holing up to their waist in it. It was bananas. No one died, thank God. But it was hard. Um, our kids never went on a spring break after we made the Mud Fest because every single year we had to get the course ready. And that was our deal as a family. We'd go over there and we leaf blow it, cut the trees off, throw the branches, paint. Everything's done in Irish colors because that's the Bardens. So everything got fresh coat of paint, and then we'd be building stuff. Now we're up to 35 obstacles on the 5 mile, which is bananas. Um, so every year, that's something that is kind of a tradition for about part of March, all of April, and now our event this year is May 4th. Um, but the day of is like our tradition, like our whole family comes together. Now it's like 500 people from Connecticut, the Bardens, and it's just freaking awesome to see like all our kids get dressed up in their kilts and they got their outfits and they're out on course, and it's like, here's crazy Dan Willams dad out there. I got a big bullhorn, and I'm like, I always make these. If you've ever been to Burning Man where they make the Burning Man sculptures, um, so every year I make this huge hollow log sculpture, and I paint it all day glow Irish colors and carve into it with a chainsaw. And then we fill it full of accelerant so it explodes into flame to start the event. We have the bagpipers, and it's just awesome because I watch the kids just there's thousands of people, but I'll see them on the course with their friends, and then afterwards we're all together, as a big family, and it's turned into a cool thing once a year that we do.
I don't think I have asked that question and gotten quite an answer like that before. So thank you for sharing that. And what's it? It's the Daniel Barden Mud Run, and you're doing
Yeah,
it.
so it's danielbardenmudfest.org. I'll send you the link and we'll put it up there. We have 3 ways to, I tell people, we have people that volunteer. and we've got about 150 volunteers a year. Volunteers end up becoming racers a lot of times because they see people out on the course and are like, I can do that. And then they end up racing. Or we have racers that tear their rotator cuff doing whatever, and then they become volunteers. And then there's the spectators, and we move people all over the course. We literally have a bandstand on top of the monkey bars at the 1.5 mile mark, which is insane. It's got a 40-mile view, and people are just freaking partying all over the course, having a great time. And then we put on barn dance. So we'll have 7 bands, and Mark Barden will come with his kids have been playing with him on the main stage, and they are unbelievable. Mark Barden just played with Sheryl Crow and Peter Frampton. He's played,
Okay.
yeah, he's played with Paul Simon. He will melt your face off with his guitar. His daughter Natalie crushes it, and James, the eldest son, plays bass and is great. Yeah,
Amazing. Well, Dan, thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing with us here. I hope everybody got something out of this. This was just packed full of a ton of information. Dan Willams from Williams Fence of Central New York. My name is Michael Columbus from Family Wealth and Legacy. You've been listening to the Family Biz Show, and I just want to say thank you all for joining us. We can't wait to share another adventure on the Family Biz Show with you next time around. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
thanks, Michael.
Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.